We've weathered the storm, but the worst may be yet to come.
Millions of Texans have been without power for 4 to 5 days.
The most recent outage map shows upwards of 800 people still without power.
What happened this week to our fellow Texans is absolutely unacceptable and can never be replicated again.
Texas. Home of big energy. Nobody does it like we do. We're number one in energy production, providing more than 1/5 of all domestically produced energy in the United States. And West Texas leads the way in oil and gas production.
In Texas is a just-in-time delivery system, meaning we are getting gas out of wells, we're processing it, putting it in pipelines, and sending it to where it's in use. If any part of that infrastructure is taken down, then the whole system can go down.
The Electric Reliability Council of Texas, ERCOT, is constantly maintaining the delicate balance of supply and demand. Sometimes we need more than we can produce, a hard lesson learned from the winter storm of February 2021.
So there are hundreds of power plants out there, and ERCOT kind of acts as the air traffic controller. They're telling which power plants to turn on and which power plants to turn off relative to how much load that we currently have, and load being the sum total of everyone using electricity kind of at that exact same instance. In electricity, you have to match supply and demand in real time, so for everybody who's consuming electricity, you have to be generating that electricity right at that exact same instance. But you only have so many power plants to go around.
Most of the country runs on two power grids, separated by the east and west. But Texas has been running and maintaining its own electrical grid since the 1930s. By keeping it entirely within the state, the federal government can't tell Texas how to run things.
Texas is a place of independent thinking, of sort of a pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of place, and so we have suspicions of too much centralized power.
But little did they know back then that Lone Star spirit would be a big draw for Bitcoin.
We are an economically dynamic state with a diverse and talented workforce, great universities, incredible opportunities for expansion and business growth. This will just be another cog in the wheel that propels Texas to be an economic leader in the world.
Bitcoin is a form of cryptocurrency, money that only exists as digital files. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins, and they have to be mined just like any other limited resource. You can think of it as virtual gold, but instead of a pickaxe, Bitcoin is mined with computers. There's no bank or central authority, but a peer-to-peer network of miners around the world. They're constantly using complex computations to verify every Bitcoin transaction in chronological order. Every verified transaction adds a block to the public ledger known as the blockchain. In return, miners are rewarded with new Bitcoin. But this mining process requires a lot of energy. Just one facility can use enough electricity to power a small town. Mining operations can be made up of hundreds or even thousands of computers, and as more miners jump in on the process, the need for energy grows. With our state's population expected to double by 2050, we're already wondering how our strained grid can keep up with demand. So what role do Bitcoin miners play in this Texas power puzzle? Enter West Texas, the land of cheap energy and the people who know how to find it.
Bitcoin miners are seeking out low-cost energy and stranded energy, whether it's renewables or natural gas or even flared gas.
I think they're starting in Texas because we have a unique situation in Texas where it's really easy to build new facilities like wind or solar farms or to connect to the grid. It's a very business-friendly state, and so I'm not surprised to see a lot of those facilities coming here.
I think that there's a significant opportunity in West Texas. The Permian Basin is a great setup for Bitcoin miners throughout the United States because of the access to affordable energy, not just on the grid, but also the access of natural gas because of all the infrastructure and all the development that has been invested over the years. There's excess power throughout the Permian everywhere.
Texas is undeniably the energy capital of the United States, we actually generate more than we can use. Natural gas is the #1 source of power for the ERCOT grid, but there's often too much to pipe out, leaving it stranded with nowhere to go. That's why you see these flares lighting up the skies.
So stranded energy or curtailed energy or energy like that is energy that cannot get to market. Because just like with stranded gas, pipes are only so big and can only take so much gas away from a field. Electricity lines are only so big and they can only carry so much electricity from power plants to load. And so if we're generating more electricity than the lines can take, then some of that electricity is what we call curtailed or stranded.
We provide a solution to this excess gas for energy companies that don't want to manage the gas because it's either they don't have infrastructure, so they have to flare it.
Jose Ortega is with Permian Mining, based out of Midland. He says Bitcoin miners come to him to find excess natural gas that can keep their computers running, a miner's greatest expense.
Our mission really is to not necessarily be the pickaxe sellers in this gold mine, but really provide anybody that wants to get in this in West Texas the roadmap. We know how to build this. We know how the technology works, and we're open to participate in any way that is fair to each party. The average cost of a mining site was 65% was driven by the power cost. So if we're partnered with the energy holder, we in essence have access to the cheapest energy possible.
But it doesn't stop there. The hunt for stranded energy is taking Bitcoin miners beyond natural gas to wind and solar farms like these that also find themselves with more energy than they can move.
If the wind is blowing across the entire western portion of Texas and all the power plants are generating electricity at the same time, not all of that can get on the existing lines that we have. So we either need to do something else with that energy or maybe make the lines bigger.
In the 2000s, Texas led the push for renewable energy. Wind and solar farms sprouted up everywhere, especially in rural areas, thanks to an initiative known as Competitive Renewable Energy Zones, or CREZ.
These were power lines that we built to better connect West Texas to Central Texas, because there saw that there's a large potential for things like wind and solar out in West Texas to generate electricity and move it to load. Whenever we put in this infrastructure, it was able to handle all of the power plants that had been built, but we've continued to build more power plants. We've continued to build more wind. We're building a lot more solar, and these lines only have a finite amount of capacity, and so we can't keep putting it on there, and so now we're seeing more stranded.
Renewable energy is abundant, but the lines are clogged, and some of it will never even make it to the grid. That's where the experts say Bitcoin miners have something to contribute.
It's a really unique opportunity to unlock stranded energy, and Texas is the energy capital of the world, so this is the best place for it.
Fort Stockton in Pecos County is home to more than 8,000 people, but what they lack in population, they make up for in power.
Within the past 2 years, we have become the leading county of renewable energy production in Texas.
These power lines may look big, but the load they can carry is limited, meaning any new energy produced would go to waste, leaving no room for new players in energy production in Fort Stockton.
It was starting to limit our capabilities and possibilities to grow and to add additional industry to Pecos County.
Here's where Bitcoin miners can once again join forces with the energy producers of West Texas. This problem for Pecos County is a great opportunity for a company like Houston-based Lancium, who will power their mining computers with Fort Stockton's renewable energy at a data center being built as we speak.
Bitcoin miners are really effective at finding and soaking up stranded energy or wasted energy where there is perhaps grid congestion, where there's not enough transmission capacity to get that energy to the heavy power using places of the state, whether they're population centers or industrial centers.
But what makes a company like Lancium different from Permian Mining is their ability to feed energy back to the grid. This is what is known as a controllable load resource.
It was a match made in heaven per se, because being able to have the renewable energy production, and then seeing the flaws of the ERCOT grid last winter in the freeze gave us the ability to, and the knowledge to know that we needed to find a user, but a user that could also possibly be turned down. This idea of controllable data centers came in, and using controllable energy has just really been a game changer for West Texas and Pecos County.
These controllable load facilities have agreements to power down if requested when supply can't keep up with demand. They give energy back to the grid and get paid for what they would have mined in that time.
They have the ability to turn off within 5 seconds, so they can do a lot of demand side stabilization for the grid. And it's really a beautiful marriage of the free market and innovation coming together to create something awesome. You're able to shave some of those peaks off and have a slightly smoother demand curve.
I think controllable loads of any type can help the system. And so, I mean, whether it's an oil and gas refining facility or a Bitcoin mining facility, I think if they're willing to be flexible, I think generally that is good for grids in not just Texas, but anywhere.
It's amazing to know that we come from such a small town in far west Texas, and yet we are what the 35 corridor depends on for some of their largest power supplies. The transformation of new renewable energies to Pecos County was a new and broadening industry that taught lots of West Texans about more than oil and gas, and then gave them new employments. Now with the creation of moving to data centers now gives us another industry and another segment of diversification for our community and for all of our citizens to look and to be able to stabilize life in Fort Stockton.
Bitcoin mining company Lancium and other crypto miners are offering up a new way to bring more energy to the grid that would otherwise go to waste. But not everyone is sold on the idea.
We need to reduce demand, and some of the ways that we can reduce demand here in Texas actually represent really good opportunities for investment in people and small businesses and things like that. For example, weatherization of homes, right? If we make homes more energy efficient, well, the people in those homes are going to save money on their energy bills, right? They're going to have a warmer home during the next winter storm, and they're going to use less energy, right? That helps the grid. Controllable load just means I'm going to lessen the impact that I cause sometimes if you pay me for it. That's all it is. It's not a net benefit to the grid.
Adrian Shelley with consumer advocacy group Public Citizen sees a few different issues with the Bitcoin boom, a stark contrast from Bitcoin supporters.
It's a net positive to the grid because you're expanding your base load of generation, whether that's natural gas, wind, or solar. So I don't see how anybody who looks at it, it does take a few minutes to really digest what's going on here. So you can't just look at a meme and really understand the dynamics. But if you take a few hours and you research it, you can understand that increased base load generation will be profitable for the grid, no matter who is creating the economic incentives for the infrastructure that's going to create that generation.
There do seem to be some local benefits there, right? I mean, that's an isolated example in which, you can see some benefit. Does that mean that Texas should welcome with open arms massive additional energy demand from, a wave of crypto miners from across the globe? I don't think so. I don't think that's the solution to our problems right now.
But as is often the case, the answer likely lies somewhere in the middle.
I think we need to do all the above. I think we need more load that's willing to be flexible. I think we need to move more power across larger parts of the state. So I think each one can be useful in its respect. Some are easier to build than others, and so I think whatever we can get done, we should.
What I don't see is very many Bitcoin mining companies who are actually investing in clean energy generation in Texas, right? If a new mining company wants to come in and it wants to invest in a solar farm or a wind farm that otherwise wouldn't be built in Texas, and that new energy is used in part to power that mine, well, hey, there's an investment in clean energy that was made possible by a Bitcoin miner.
So people that are mining with renewables are generally mining very, very large amounts, and it's not an opportunity that's accessible by a large majority. So our goal really too is to help decentralize the access to Bitcoin mining for people in West Texas.
This is a sentiment echoed by the governor, but it could bring more than just Bitcoin to West Texas.
Because they do demand a lot of power, that ongoing demand for a lot of power will hopefully stimulate more power generators to create more power, especially through sources like natural gas. We want companies to invest in producing more natural gas in the state. The only way we can get them to make those investments is for there to be more power demand that will help them pay the bills to pay off the construction of increasing natural gas facilities. So the bottom line is the massive increase that we are seeing in Bitcoin mining and Ethereum mining and some others here in Texas likely could add to an increase in the production of power generation facilities.
Ultimately, what we want to see is, clean energy future in Texas, right? We're looking for opportunities to make the grid more resilient, more reliable, but also cleaner, right? We're looking at wind, we're looking at solar plus storage. These are the solutions that we see ultimately for the grid. Fossil fuels have a big role to play in the energy economy in Texas right now. Natural gas is a huge part of the energy grid. That's changing slowly, but it's not changing tomorrow, right? Ultimately, what we want to see, though, is a transition. If what Bitcoin mining companies are offering is an opportunity for fossil fuel companies, to use fuels that they wouldn't otherwise use, to realize more economic value out of fossil fuel extraction, that's not ultimately what we want to see. We don't think that's in the interest of Texans. We're looking for a transition away from a fossil fuel economy and from fossil fuels for energy generation.
The key really is the energy mix in the grid, right, in ERCOT. We want to try to drive down the coal usage, but we got to have natural gas, and we need our natural gas generators. There's just no way to power the Texas grid, or any grid for that matter, with solely renewables based upon the way renewables work. And Bitcoin miners create incentives for more renewables and create a situation in which we can have far more renewables than we otherwise would have been able to put on the grid, based upon those curves of generation that we see with renewables. So we can't forget that natural gas is the backbone of the grid in Texas.
The fact is, there is no single or easy solution to Texas's problems. It requires responsible investment, responsible resource use and management. People who chase the Bitcoin mining industry as some sort of a magic bullet solution to the energy grid problems in Texas, frankly, it's a false hope, and I think it's really unfortunate.
Texas is already the leader in energy production. Now tech companies are flocking here, putting us at the forefront of technology and even blazing humanity's path to the stars. So what will Bitcoin mean for Texas? Will it help usher in a new era of natural gas and renewables in the Lone Star State? Or will the Bitcoin revolution overwhelm our electrical grid completely?
I think if they're willing to be flexible, I think generally that is good for grids in not just Texas, but anywhere.
It can work in other states as well. It doesn't work as well in co-ops or in capacity market states. So it's really ideal for Texas. Texas is not the only place in the country that will benefit from this kind of economic activity, but it certainly will be the largest.
Frankly, we think that Bitcoin miners have overstated their potential to solve Texas's energy problems.
Companies like Permian Mining and Lancium are proposing the idea that instead of being an additional strain on our grid, these mining centers could help solve our energy problem, while at the same time propelling us to the forefront of technical innovation.
The data center is a great fit in Pecos County because what it allows us to do is use the power that we have been creating for multiple years, as well as creates and diversifies our economy away from the oil and gas industry to help us have a stability in the ups and downs of the oil and gas industry.
The digital world is only expanding, so the need to store data and process data is very critical. So anybody that is producing energy and can provide large quantities of energy has an opportunity to diversify in the way that they monetize their energy source.
It's not the solution to our problems, right? Ultimately, the solution that we're looking for, the solution that we think the Texans want and need, is not build more energy, get more energy to more customers. That's not what we're looking for. We want to see responsible use of the energy we have. We want to see opportunities to save energy, because that means saving money for people, right? And we want to see responsible use of our state's resources.
Texans are not afraid of big ideas. After all, big is what we do. And we're not afraid of living in the shadow of big energy either. Whether that be pump jacks or wind farms, Texans, especially West Texans, embrace it. One thing is certain: a Texas-sized problem requires a uniquely West Texas solution.